All right. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to PRISM, a spectrum of our theater, its artists, and the society that sustains them. PRISM is the Department of Theater Arts, and it's inaugurational annual guest speaker series, and we hope that PRISM will be vital, a connection between Loyola Marymount University and professors and professionals in the theater arts community. For spring of 2021, we are thematically centering Black theater artists whose work and life experiences foreground issues of racial and social justice. And to our guest today, Professor Scot Reese could not fit this description any better. He's incredible. In light of our COVID restrictions, of course, all of our lectures are on Zoom, hence why we're in this format right now. But I just wanted to share that. Also, we wanted to give special thanks. I scrolled a little bit too much. There we go. Next one, let's see. There we go. I want to give special thanks to our dean, Dean Brian Alexander, and of course the College of Communication and Fine Arts for their support, Kate Shirley, our chair, Kay Noon, all of our serious speakers. Scott, thank you so much for just coming in and wanting to do this and wanting to talk to our students. And of course our students, because we wouldn't be able to do this without our students, and everyone in the Department of Theater Arts, and also everyone who is the faculty. So thank you so much for being here in the space and everything. For everyone watching, we have for best viewing directions. And so first, if you could go to your upper right corner, there's select view speaker. You can have view speaker or you can have gallery. And for this session, it would probably be best to have select view speaker until Scott would like to work with people. Then, or Scott, you can have the gallery view and then view speaker. If you're able to have your camera on, that would be great so that Scott can see everyone and see your reactions. I know a couple students that aren't feeling well today. They will have their cameras off, and I have one who's got poor connectivity issues, but they're still here and they're still going to be present. So we understand if you can't have your camera on, but if you can, that would be fantastic. Feel free to use the chat for questions and the raise hand feature. I know Scott's going to be talking a lot, but that'll be good for him to be able to see the raised hands. And so there are moments within today's talk that Scott will have that he has allocated for questions. And so sometimes you might want to keep your question, and then he'll have 2 moments where you can ask a ton of questions for him as well. Make sure that you are muted during this presentation, please. We know all the lovely effects. I have a dog who loves to bark, so I will make sure that I am muted as soon as I'm done speaking. And this presentation is also going to be recorded. We're trying to upload all these presentations to our CFA YouTube so that we can share them and beyond LMU and showcase all these incredible artists that are coming in and talking about their expertise and everything that they're doing and have done for the field. Last but not least, we have, oh my goodness, what is going on here? There we go. See, it looks so, there we go. Last but not least, we have your bio, Scott, for everyone to see. I'm not going to read the entire bio because that takes up time, but I will share that Professor Scot Reese is incredibly just a powerhouse in the field, and especially a representation of Black theater scholars that have paved the way for a lot of people who have literally stood in the trenches and helped change the field in many ways, shapes, and forms. And even though Scott has been teaching for X amount of years, he's still teaching, he's still running a department, he's still making incredible choices that are innovative and that are revolutionary. And so with that, I'll let everyone, you can read the rest of the bio. I'm going to hand it over to you, Scott, so that we can start and it could be all about you.
Great. Well, first of all, it's so nice to see so many smiling faces on the West Coast. It's 9:30 our time. So if you see me yawning at any time, it's not because of you, it's just getting past my bedtime. I teach tomorrow morning, but I'm excited to see you all. I want to thank Daphne, who I met years ago at Black Theater Network and ATHA, and my good friend, Professor Benedict. If you've had her in class, you know how wonderful and how lucky you are to have her. And if you haven't, make sure that you do before you graduate. And along with all the mentors that I have in my life, I consider Diane one of those for me. So today we're going to talk about first Black theater performance. And the way I kind of will go through this talk, I'm not a lecturer. I have an MFA, not a PhD. So I'm not going to talk in PhD speak. This is going to be an MFA speak. It's going to be interactive. So I'm going to do a little, if I only had a certain amount of time and someone came to me and said, hey, what do I need to know about Black theater performance? And I only have half an hour. This is what I would tell them. So then it would give you discovery, I hope, for where you could go on your own, because there's only so much that you can talk about at this time. But I'm going to give you some of the highlights and the guideposts that if I wanted to delve further into it. And I think I sent Daphne some attachments, so she'll make those available for you all also. And also that I looked on your website and she just created a wonderful site. You couldn't read everything on Black theater, BIPOC theater, but it's a good place to start. So in the summer break, when you have some time, start going through all of those things, because it really is. In fact, I copied it and I'm going to use some of that stuff for ours. So first of all, what is Black theater? I'm sorry. And the way they'll do this, we'll talk first about Black theater performance, and then we'll have a question and answer session. And then we're going to talk about being BIPOC or to be young, gifted, and Black and going to grad school. What do you need to know if you're a person of color going to grad school? And also for students of any color that want to go to grad school, some of these things that you might want to consider, because that's one of the biggest things that students seem to ask me. So then we'll have question and answer after that too. And I'm not good at reading chat while I'm talking. So yes, so write down your questions and then we'll get to the chat or raise your hands. Much easier than all these different screens that I'm trying to navigate.
Yes, Scott, let me know whatever. I can always read you the questions from the chat. I can collect those for you and read them for you.
Great, that'll work also. Okay. And we have a lot of talk. And Laura Linney, I directed years ago in a play called Barefoot in the Park. And I was talking a little quickly. We had 4 days of rehearsal, and then it was a stage reading for back when they did LA Theater Works. And she goes, Scott, we have a lot to do in a very short amount of time, so we have to work very slowly. And I've used that. There was another director, I think, that had used that on her. So I go, that's what I'll try to do. I'm going to try to slow down my cadence, because there's a lot of good stuff to talk about and we might not get to everything. So first of all, what is Black theater? How do you define it? And the way that I define it is FUBU. And raise your hand if you know the acronym FUBU or FUBU clothing. Okay, a couple of you. And do you know what it stands for? Yeah, for us, by us. So, and that's what Black theater was: for us, by us, about us, and near us. So you have to remember that near us also. So as I'm starting to talk about the Negro Ensemble Company, that's where the near us will come in also. I want to talk to you just a little bit about my journey, because I started out in the theater in a different place than it is right now. And I'm also standing on the shoulders of some incredible people that helped get me to where that I am right now. And one of the people that, if I want to make sure I don't forget his name, is Harry Elam, who's probably one of the most preeminent scholars in Black theater and performance. And he just happened to be at University of Maryland before I got there. And he was a teacher there for 4 years and then went to Stanford. When he got to Stanford, because Sandra Richards, who I'll talk about, she was at Stanford, she left for Northwestern. So I got my job at University of Maryland because Sandra went to Northwestern, Harry took Sandra's job, and I took Harry's job. So there's really only 3 people in Black theater. I started out at Eastern Illinois University because it was the state school, it was the cheapest to go to, and that's where I was able to afford. And it was in the cornfields of Illinois. So I got on the stage there, but I realized it's time to go. So I transferred to UCLA. And at UCLA, there were 2 Black actors in the theater department and 3 Asian American actors. And I know them all to this day, and we're still all friends, because in a school of 40,000 people in LA, I thought it'd be a little bit more diverse. But oh no, not for that time period. I graduated in 1981. But I met some mentors there. A wonderful actress named Terry Hayes and a singer named Larry Dupelshane, that we are backup singers that we were working in Vegas on our times off. And Terry said, you get the best training as an actor, a singer, and dancer if you want to do this, because they might be able to deny you because of your race, because they can't deny you because of your talent. And you'll never walk out of an audition thinking that you didn't have the talent to do the job. So that's what I did. I studied, and I studied hard. At this time, and was friends with Diane. She can know that there weren't a lot of people. We did Daryl Hickman's acting class together. Not a lot of Black actors in that class. I might have been it. But I got the best training and a good mentor. And from that, I want to do more theater, but at this time, there was Black theater, there was white theater. It's not the theater that you see right now. There was not anything called color conscious casting. There wasn't even the horrible phrase colorblind casting, where they don't see your race, that basically you were doing one or the other. And many of the plays, they weren't great depictions of Black characters in them. So I ended up doing a little bit more TV and film, and from that playing the young Black boyfriend. And you can only do so many of those roles. I went to New York to do more stage, realized the same thing. There's only so many shows on Broadway. There was not a Black Broadway at that time. But fortunately, I ended up getting a morning talk show on CBS and in Boston. And the reason I'm telling the story, that was because the producer of this was a Black man named Bob Glover. And all of a sudden, it's like the heavens parted, the sun shining. Go, there's people who are making the decisions are also people of color. So finally, I had an insight. This is what you can do. I had the time after 3 years, and fortunately won some awards for the show. Said, if you want to do anything in life, what would it be? And I said, probably direct and have a professional career along that I'm trained to do. And thank God for Diane goes, do not get an MFA in acting. The world does not need another MFA in acting. If you become a director, then you can call your shots and you can make jobs and you can make possibilities. So because of Diane, I got my MFA in directing, and it was the best choice that I ever made. I also will talk about this more. I chose a school that would have something different. And I chose Northwestern along with its fabulous theater reputation, but also was one of the 2 schools in the country that had performance studies. I know you all know performance studies, but back in the 90s, where there were no performance studies, you had NYU and you had Northwestern. And basically it was starting with chamber theater, this, that, and the other. So when you're talking about grad schools, we'll talk to that, but why you choose these places to go to grad school. When I'm at Northwestern, I meet Sandra Richards, and Sandra Richards is probably the preeminent scholar, along with Harry Elam, on Black theater. So Sandra becomes a mentor, and I was just there for 3 years to get my MFA directing, get my bona fides, and leave. And she goes, Scott, there's so few Black professors in the academy, and even fewer Black men. All the Black, other than Harry, were women that I knew. So I go, okay, I should think about this, did it. And while I was at Northwestern also, I was fortunate that they were doing 2 Trains Running, the new August Wilson play at the Goodman Theater, and they needed an assistant director. Well, at Northwestern at this time, out of 14 MFA students, I was the only Black student. And in the PhD program, they had 1 Black student. So there were 2 of us in a whole graduate theater department. For me, it was good because I was the one that they trot down to the Goodman Theater, and the person that just happened to be directing 2 Trains Running was Lloyd Richards. You probably don't know his name, but it's a name you should know. And I didn't know because I didn't know my theater that well back then. He directed a little play called Raisin in the Sun on Broadway. And at this time, he was the person that was directing all of the August Wilson plays. Lloyd Richards, probably the iconoclast in Black theater, because at this time, he's directing 2 Trains Running. He's also the dean of theater at Yale School of Drama, a pretty good theater program. Not only was the dean of Yale School of Drama, he ran the playwriting center at the O'Neill Center, which is probably the preeminent playwriting place. All the places go to Broadway, off Broadway, all start at the O'Neill Center. So here's a Black man who is directing, who was running Yale School of Drama, and also the Playwrights Center. So I go, I can never complain about there's not jobs out there, there's not opportunities. And I think that you see the people that come through Yale. There's a little kid named Terrell Alvin McCraney, who is now head of playwriting there. And if you know his work. He had a little play called Moonlight that then became a little movie that won some awards. So now instead of going on, and he'll write other movies, but he wanted to give back. And he's only in his 30s. So now he's the head of playwriting at Yale. So you can do that. And so those are the people of the shoulders that I stand on. So I then moved from Chicago to DC because I wanted to be close to New York, but I didn't want to live in New York, and I didn't want to go back to California because I knew I'd probably go right back into TV. And DC had the largest regional theater growth for small professional theaters at that time, next to Seattle and Atlanta and that kind of stuff. And they had, being in Washington DC, it had a good Black community. You also had Howard University, the Howard University Players. And fortunately, I got hooked up with some of my first professional gigs with the African Continuum Theater Company run by Jennifer Nelson. Jennifer Nelson is another stalwart of the theater, and she's my theater mama, and she hired me as a director. It's hard when you're a young director to get your first jobs, so I'm working with Jennifer, and she's teaching me everything that she knows about coming from the living stage, which was a part of Arena Stage. And Arena Stage was one of the first regional theaters when they started regional theaters in the country by Zelda Fitch-Handler, another woman that ran one of the biggest regional theaters in the country. So as you get discouraged about being a person of color, a minority, a woman in theater, look back in the history and you'll see these people that did it. And I would say, if they could do it with what they were struggling with right now, we can do it in this time. You just got to know your history and know you have to work twice as hard for half of what you get. So there, and when I'm at University of Maryland, I'm then starting, they had 2 undergraduate students, 2 graduate students, and I was brought in to jumpstart what Harry had left. And because if you don't have representation, you don't have the students. So they brought me in, and then I started a theater company called Creativity, which was a multicultural theater company. And from that, we were able to explore the canon. So that's how I got to do what I'm able to do. So now I want to, I'm going to share my screen with you because we're going to take a boat and canoe from late 19th century to the present of the plays that I think that are important that you should know about in any look at a Black theater and performance continuum. Most schools teach Black theater and performance in 1 semester, but I was able to do it in 2. In 1 semester, I'll teach the late 19th century, the 1960s, and the second semester, the 1960s to the present. And if I was going to do it 3 semesters, it'd be the first, the second, then it'd stop at the 1970s and then go from the 1980s to the present if I was going to do 3 semesters, because there's just too much information. And now people are either putting Black theater performance kind of 3 weeks into a history course, and then they'll do contemporary Black theater. So I'm not going to talk about as much about the contemporary Black theater, because from the 2000 on, it's so easy for you guys to see and research, and hopefully you know some of those names. But having more of an introduction to these plays, I think it'll give a good journey for you guys into what you'll be able to do. So I'm going to share my screen now. And okay, no, we don't want that. Why is that not coming in? Sorry. Let me see here. Share. Okay, I'm going to stop that and hopefully do that again. I thought I had that pulled up. So Black theater. Script. All right. Do this one more time. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, I do this all the time, so don't worry. I've been there. This is me in every class, every day. I'm like, I can't find it.
And I share all the time. And oh, advanced, maybe I have to have. Yeah. Oh, it's a brand new thing that's coming up for this share. This isn't going to be good. Okay. All right. If it's in my dashboard, which I have, and I want to share screen, why is it?
You're welcome to share. You should have access. Let me just make you just in case. I'll make you a co-host in case.
Because all I'm getting is desktop, whiteboard, iPhone AirPlay. Oh, now I got it. Here we go. Okay, now you see Black Theater USA volumes 1 and 2. Everybody sees that? Cool. Thank you. All right, let me pull this over here so I can see this. Okay, here we go. Hold on to your seats. So I'm going to put it into categories for you. Take notes, and if I was going to have a couple of books for you, if you get James Hatch's Black Theater USA, volume 1 and 2, in these 2 volumes, you have so much of the Black canon that you should know about. So we start out with The Age of the Abolitionist, and you have William Wells Brown, which is The Escape or Leap to Freedom, written in 1858. And now this is the first published Black play. So there were plays before this, but this is the first one. It's important because William Wells Brown was an enslaved person who actually tried in his real life to escape. A couple times he got dragged back to the plantation, but with the help of a Quaker, Wells Brown, who he got his name from, he was able to escape to Canada. And it almost reads like a Shakespearean play with John and Melinda in it, with beautiful monologues, very flowery verse. The second play you should take a look at is Angelina Weld Grimke, her play Rachel, and this is the first Black produced play. The story of this is that Rachel, who's a school teacher, they take into this young Black boy into their family because the parents had died of tuberculosis. A kid throws a rock at him, hits him in the back, and he's bruised, and he calls him the N-word. And Rachel says, the scar will heal in his back, the bruise, but the scar of his soul will never heal by the first time you're heard calling the N-word. And she goes, she's engaged with this guy named John and said, I can never get married because I don't want to have children in a world where this is still happening. Well, it wasn't a well-received play because they thought that Rachel was promoting genocide. And she wasn't. She was saying that we should change the world so we could have kids like this in a world. And she thought if she wrote a play from a mother's point of view, she could reach the white women in the community, and then they would want to put this forward, but they didn't see it that way. It's a beautiful play, also very melodramatic, 1916. Now you get into plays where you're starting to hear more of the authors where you might know them, because if there's one part of African-American history and Black theater, you know, it's probably the Harlem Renaissance. But also the Harlem Renaissance is built into 2 periods, basically, from 1920 to 1924, 25, and then 1925 to 30, stock market crash, where whites start co-opting and taking the Black experience for themselves. To start with the anti-lynching plays, if there's one, you can only read so much of those before you can't read anymore. So you might want to start with The Sunday Morning in the South, a beautiful play. Georgia Douglas Johnson, she had the S Street Salon in DC and ran with all the Harlem, as we would say, the niggerati of that time. Then you have Rita Bonner, Zora Neale Hurston, who you probably know more as a writer, as a novelist. Her Eyes Are Watching God is probably the book that most people would know. But she wrote plays also. And she wrote a wonderful play called Color Struck in 1926. The reason I put this in, it's about colorism in the Black community. So we're talking about interracial problems. The paper bag test, where if you were lighter than a brown-skinned paper bag, that you were allowed in polite society. And if you were darker than a paper bag, you were thought less of. And the men and women in the community at that time, the women were trying to marry up in color, because if you were light-skinned, you were thought of and more marriageable. So it's the whole interracial prejudice in the Black community that people were talking about. And then we have Rita Bonner in 1928. She wrote a play called The Purple Flower. This is important because it's the first abstract play. So we always think of kind of the same kitchen sink drama, The Raisin and the Sons, as what Black theater is. No, we are writing the same kind of plays in our community. And it was a metaphor about race issues. And it's a very short play. My students, they read it, they go, this was really written in 1928? Yes, it was. And then we get into the 1930s. It's kind of the Negro nadir at that time. There's not much written, because if you think of how the stock market crash in the 30s affected the white community, you can just imagine how it affected the Black community. But then we get in the 40s and 50s in the war, and it's the age of Richard Wright / James Baldwin. So those are seminal writers at that time, and people were writing in that style. So you have Langston Hughes, whom most people would know as more of a novelist and an essayist and a poet, but he wrote one of the first domestic plays on Broadway that issued on father-son race issues, but people didn't want to hear about with the Black community, because at that time, and Daphne Price teach about that, it was all song and dance. We could do the minstrels, we could do the vaudeville, but they had no interest of us doing domestic plays. Also, you have to remember Broadway was segregated at that time. So the only way that you would see it is in nigger heaven upstairs. You would not be on the main floor seeing Black productions. So who would be going to see that? They also changed his version of his play to make it happy at the end, because that's the only way that you could have Black plays on Broadway. Now, 1959, A Raisin in the Sun, that's where most people start Black theater history. People don't realize there were actually plays done before Raisin in the Sun. And I gotta tell you, as a kid, I didn't know about any of these plays, and we saw the movie of Raisin in the Sun when that came out. I go, oh, so that's the starting of it. And if you're going to, that's a great place to start, because it is a wonderful play. Directed a couple of versions of it. She was the first woman playwright on Broadway with a successful play with a Black director, and that Black director was Lloyd Richards. Along with Raisin in the Sun, she did many other plays and telenovelas, and the two other successful plays of her were Les Blancs and Simon Sidney Brewster's Window. And if you study Raisin in the Sun, you know all the issues. She's writing about abortion. We're not even white playwrights are writing about abortion in 1959. She's about women's right. Beneatha cuts her hair into a natural. Women weren't wearing naturals. She's so ahead of her time. And fortunately, she died in her 30s. And right before she died, she had another play on Broadway, the Simon Sidney Brewster's Window. And a wonderful play about a Black woman married to a white man. They're Bohemians in Greenwich Village. They have a gay Black next door neighbor. And it's not as successful as Raisin in the Sun, because they said, you should write what you know. You should write Raisin in the Sun again and again. Well, the Raisin in the Sun wasn't about her. Lorraine Hansberry came from a very affluent Black family. Her father was a very powerful real estate broker that moved them into a white community. And the true story is that the whites were so unhappy that they threw a brick through the window, and it just barely missed Lorraine's head. And her mother would put her in a little white mink stole to take her to school every day, and kids would throw things on it. So she dealt with prejudice in that way, but not in the tenement housing that depicted the younger family in Raisin in the Sun. So I'd highly recommend Simon Sidney Brewster's Window. Then you have Alice Childress, who her play, The Wedding Band, was one of the most produced plays in the 50s about a Black and white couple getting married and the prejudice they had to deal with that. And a play that right now is getting a lot of productions is Trouble in Mind. And that's about a theater company that's putting on a show with Black actors and older Black actors and younger Black actors and older white and younger white, and how those two generations deal in the 50s. It's a beautiful play. I don't know if they've done it in California yet, but they had a couple of productions here on the East Coast. And before COVID, they were thinking it would go to Broadway. Next, you have the Black arts movement. Black Power movement, 1965 and 1975. So many plays here, but the one that I would point you to is Amiri Baraka's Dutchman. Revolutionary play. You gotta know it. Everybody, it's a two-hander about a Black man on a subway with a white woman. Earl Handman and Shirley Knight did the original production of it. There's a great movie, so you can get it in your libraries and that kind of stuff. It's a short play, and it takes you there. His last monologue, you just want to see it for when he goes off on her, and you'll be snapping and everything that you want. Then you get into Adrian Kennedy, Funny House of a Negro, 1964, Theater of the Absurd. And I always say, if Gertrude Stein makes you crazy reading, then Adrian Kennedy will knock you off your socks. You'll just, and it's a short play, and my students will read it and go, why are you, I go, let's dissect this, let's talk about it. It's a story of a young Black lady who's biracial. So she's a Black woman living in a Black and white world, and how you navigate that during the civil rights movement. Beautiful, beautiful play. And Adrienne Kennedy at the Signature Theater in New York a couple years ago, they did a retrospective. So they did 5 of her plays all together. She's just fabulous, fabulous writer. Then we get into the Negro Ensemble Company. Ding, 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 red letter day in that Black theater for Black people. And it was for us, by us, but it wasn't near us. The Negro Ensemble Company was in Greenwich Village, and people were a little upset because they said if it was in Harlem, they would have more of their people that were actually able to see the shows. But in Greenwich Village, it was more of the bohemians, the people that could afford white people to go and see it. It doesn't matter because they produced season after season of successful plays. You'd have 5 plays in a season, all Black plays, Black writers, Black directors. Some of these people that came out of there are too many to list, but the ones today, I think you might know this Angela Bassett girl, this Denzel Washington. He has this, or maybe you know his son, John Henry Washington. If anyone saw Malcolm and Marie or Black Klansman, Samuel Jackson, Felicia Rashad, Lawrence Fishburne. It's just a cadre of all these amazing people that were able to work because they weren't getting work in other places. So they started in the Negro Ensemble Company, and that gave them the place that people would actually come and see them and then cast them in other things. And then you get to Douglas Turner Ward, 1965, Day of Absence, and we have another satire. So you think of Rita Bonner doing Purple Flower, and then Adrienne Kennedy, Funny House of Negro, that then links it to Day of Absence. Great story of Day of Absence. Think of the year 1965. This is a play about a Southern town, an all-white Southern town, and all the Black people vanish. They don't know where they've gone. Well, all of the white characters are played by Black actors in whiteface. 1965. And you can also watch the video of that. And it's such a biting satire. And actually this happened that in certain places in the United States at that time, all the Blacks took off one day and said, how can you run the country? And then I think, and definitely I know this better than me, I think about 10 or 12, 15 years ago, the Latinx community did the same thing. They said, we're doing a day of absence. And this all came from the Black community say, this is what happened. And even the kids, it was more pronounced with Latinx community because the kids were in high schools and that they all got excuses to be excused from classes. And some of the teachers wouldn't let them. And there was a lot of press that was made for that, which didn't happen for the Blacks when they did their day of absence. So we progressed. Then we go to Ed Bullins. Ed Bullins is so important. Going to Buffalo, one of my favorite plays of his, he wrote more plays than August Wilson, but he wasn't writing for a white audience. He was writing for a Black audience. So even though that he was writing lots of plays, only the Black community, and you can only get so much press, and so many of the Black plays, even if they're successful, they weren't produced, they weren't published. So they were self-published. And a lot of times that you would have to find people that knew someone that knew some to be able to get you that play. Then you get into the 70s and 80s, and we are the Blaxploitation movement in film, which also then reflects to the theater. And if there's anything you might know more contemporary is Jackie Brown, which is a Quentin Tarantino movie that featured Pam Grier. And Pam Grier was the Black woman at that time. She was Coffee, she was Cleopatra Jones, all these, I wish I knew the tagline for what, I forget the tagline, I don't want to get it wrong. And you had Dolomite, which was the movie that Eddie Murphy just redid on the story of that. You had Melvin Van Peebles, Black Ass, Sweet, Sweet Black Ass Song, which one of the first of those films. So during this time, when you have a lot of the Blaxploitation films, people are denouncing them, saying there's a lot of pimps and women and hoes and da-da-da-da, but we weren't seeing anything else. And at least these were strong Black women. And Pam Grier talks about that she got so much because she's able to make the calls, do the shots, get the money that she wasn't getting in any other films. Okay, so then during this time period, you have Ntozake Shange for Color Girls Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. That's probably one of the most produced Black plays. And this is significant because it was a choreo poem. And you'll see in the way that I was written it, the play is written, if you take a look at it, there's no punctuation and no capitalization. So for the entire play, you have to make your decision on how you're going to say the lines, because we're not a monolith and each person is going to say it differently. They just had a revival on at Broadway, I think like 2 years ago, right before the theater shut down. There's a horrible movie of it, and please don't watch it. But if you do, just know it's horrible. Tyler Perry did it, and he put men into the movie. And poor Janet, she's having to say these monologues, and watch it for fun. But no, it has nothing to do with the play of For Colored Girls Who Consider Suicide. And if anyone's seen it, we can talk about that. Charles Fuller, Zoom Man and the Sign, and a Soldier's Play. Soldier's Play was a Negro Ensemble Company, and then it was made into a movie with a young Blair Underwood and Denzel and just a cast of Adolph Caesar, who won the Academy Award for it. And then you have George C. Wolfe. George C. Wolfe wrote The Colored Museum, which is now probably the most produced satire. The Colored Museum they have a rotating stage, and it's all these exhibits in a Black museum, which are one of the plays called The Last Mama on the Couch play. So he's taking a shot at all the Black women on the couch play. They do Black models. They do snap queens. So Denitra Vance, who was one of the first Black woman on Saturday Night Live before Eddie Murphy, and she died very young of cancer. She was starring, and you can see this on YouTube. If you look on YouTube, you can find the whole play or snippets of it for the Colored Museum. And then he went in to produce probably one of the first big Black musicals in our modern times, of Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk, which made us stars. It was the history of Black theater through dance, music, and song. And if you know the tap dancer, Savion Glover, that's where he got his start. Then he did this little play, which wasn't a Black play, but featured a Black actor, Belize, Angels in America. I think you might know that play. So that's directed by George C. Wolfe, but he didn't do the movie. They gave that to Mike Nichols. And he's most recently represented with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, that just came out on Netflix recently, with Viola and the wonderful Chadwick Boseman in his last performance. And if you didn't see that, go and see that, and then make sure you see The Five Bloods, Spike Lee's movie, because that was Chadwick's movie that he did before Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So everything that Chadwick did was great. He started here at Howard University, did theater in the DC area. He was a spectral force that was to be seen and not believed. Then I go into Cheryl West. This is Before It Hits Home. The reason I include this, she's a Chicago playwright, and she was talking about AIDS in the Black community in the 80s. First of all, nobody in the Black community was talking about AIDS. There was no AIDS in the Black community. There were no gay people in the Black community. So for her to write a play about this, and the turn on this is that he's a bisexual Black man. He tells his family, because he has to come home, because so many people, they had to come out and then they had to tell their family that they were dying, that the mother alienates him, but the father is the one that takes him in, which was a nice turn on that story. Now, all these people that I talked about, they made room for the people that we have now. So we all know August Wilson, and usually if it's Black History Month, there's going to be an August Wilson play done somewhere. Or if you're a white theater company and for their diversity play, they're going to be doing an August Wilson. But there are so many other people to choose from. Yes, do the August Wilson, but look at all the other plays and playwrights that we have. And then Anna Devere Smith, Twilight Los Angeles, I included that for Los Angelinos. And she was one of the first Black documentary theater people. A lot of people say she started that, but that was really Emily Mann that was doing documentary theater before Anna, but Anna got the big name and she got the movies and all that kind of stuff. So you want to take a look at her. Then we have 4 Black women now on Broadway playwrights. So you have Katori Hall, that wrote the book for Tina Turner, the musical, that was just about to start. and then COVID. Dominic Morisseau, I'm sure you know some of her plays, Detroit 67, The Detroit Cycle. She wrote the book for Ain't Too Proud. Dana Guerrera, who you probably know more as an actress from this little Wakanda movie. So she was in Black Panther, but The Convert on Broadway with this actor, she's up and coming, you're gonna know a lot about her, Lupita Nyong'o. And then Lynn Nottage, who had Sweat on Broadway, which I think it started in Los Angeles before it moved east for that also. So that's our Black straight plays. And then talk just a little bit about Black musicals, and then we'll do some question and answers. So the minstrel shows, you can talk about that. Usually people study that, how blackface wasn't just in white actors doing blackface, but Blacks were also doing blackface. You had minstrel shows. I tell you the structure of this, and I think that I gave Daphne the handout for this, so you can look this for yourself too. Vaudeville, you can study more about this. The beginning is a Black musical comedy, Creole shows, The Octoroons, birth of Black musical comedy. You should know Marion Cook and Bob Cole. Williams and Walker became two of the biggest writers and directors, producers of their shows. Then you get into Homie, which now you're going to Broadway, Bandana Land. Then the next generation, so shuffle along. This is gonna come back to us, U.B. Blake and Noble Sissel, and they were the fathers of today's American musical theater. So the other ones, really, you wouldn't see much of that in today's theater, but you would for Shuffle Along. Then we have the white Black musicals. And it wasn't until I started studying theater that I didn't realize that these aren't really Black musicals. I always thought that Porgy and Bess was written by Black folks. Nope, that was Fabulous Gershwin Brothers, okay? So even though people call it a Black musical, with me, forced bias about it doesn't really have anything other than it's about us. But is it really? I don't know if we'll talk if anyone's ever seen Porgy and Bess, but it's really stereotypical productions of Black folks. And even like Showboat, the language, the stereotypes, they changed it this last time, if anybody saw the tour with Norm Lewis and Audra McDonald, which they changed it so much they had to call it the Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, because it's a completely different version of what would be seen. It's like if you've seen Showboat, are they doing the newer version of Showboat, or are they doing the older stereotypical Showboat? Then you have the Federal Theater Project and the Negro Unit, where with the Federal Theater Project, yes, they had all the white shows that were going on, but in like Seattle Repertory Black Theater Company came out of the Negro Unit. So they were making places for people to be able to do these productions. Swing, Mikado, the Black Mikado, all of these things all came from that. Orson Welles did the Black Mikado. Then you had more white Black musicals. Carmen Jones, that was Oscar Hammerstein, so you probably know Rodgers and Hammerstein, Oklahoma, South Pacific, all of those musicals. They took the opera Carmen and then made it into Carmen Jones. And you can imagine Dorothy Dandridge, Sidney Poitier. The movie is kind of fun to watch. Everyone's singing voices are dubbed sometimes by white singers. But they just did off-Broadway a beautiful version of Carmen Jones that was in a beautiful black box theater and really nice production of it, with the gorgeous Nika Noni Rose playing the lead in that. And then some of the other ones, you can see these movies today: Cabin in the Sky, Stormy Weather, St. Louis Woman, beautiful, or St. Louis Woman, just beautiful, beautiful music. And Lost in the Stars, which is a Kurt Weill musical based on the book Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Paton, who a lot of us read. Having grew up, I don't think it's on the high school reading list anymore, about South Africa and whites and blacks, and a gorgeous, gorgeous musical, Lost in the Stars. And it's almost an opera if you want to see it. And Todd Duncan, who does the leads, gorgeous, gorgeous. I know I'm running on time. So Actors Equity and Integration, how they had chorus lines, they had to integrate those or no leading role, all the racial discrimination. So the 50s, along with the equal right movement, they had to integrate Broadway. Langston Hughes, that we talked about in Mulatto, but he had some of the musicals they're still doing today. Simply Heavenly is fun comedy with music. And then Black Nativity, I'm sure there's a place in Los Angeles to do it. In Chicago, DC, New York, a lot of theaters make their whole season's money by doing Black Nativity in the Christmas season. So they run Black Nativity, and that will give them the budget for the rest of their season. Also did Tambourines to Glory, blah, blah, blah. And now 1970s to present. And these, for me, it to be a Black musical has to be hopefully both the book and the musical. I'm sorry, the book, the libretto, and the music by a Black author. And there are so few, because so many of the shows you think, Once on This Island, if you know Once on This Island musical, great musical, right? Beautiful Black musical. No, Aarons and Flaherty wrote it. It's all white writers. Memphis, white writers. So these are the ones that are really Black musicals. Pearly by Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis. Ain't Misbehavin', the Fats Waller musical, the music of Fats Waller, starring the incredible Neil and Nell Carter, who passed years ago, had her own show. God, what was her show? It'll come back to me or it won't. Raisin, yes, there was a musical built on Raisin and the Sun, and guess what? It was good. The Wiz. If there's any musical that we all know in our community, it's The Wiz, okay? It's a horrible book. It's just a horrible book, no matter how. But Amber Ruffin, if you know from the Amber Ruffin show or Seth Meyers, she's writing a new book for it. So hopefully with her writing it, we'll have a Wiz that you can actually not cringe during the scenes and just wait for the next song. Five Guys Named Mo. I talked about bringing the noise, bringing the funk. Fela Kuti, who was a Nigerian song composer, and he was one of the most, in world music, everybody knows Fela. This was on Broadway, and it wouldn't have lasted, but Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith and Beyonce and Jay-Z all were producers of it. So they kept the musical running with less full houses until it brought back enough for the investors to get back enough. And then they were able to run it on Broadway. But white producers will let shows run, but Black producers, Black shows, if they don't make it back right away, they cancel them. After Midnight, which is a review of Black music, Motown, the Broadway musical, Charles Randolph Wright directed it, the music of Berry Gordy. Shuffle Along. So I think you remember back in the 1920s, how they did Shuffle Along with the first one. Well, they redid it on Broadway in 2016 with Audra McDonald, Brian Stokes Mitchell, Billy Porter, Joshua Redmond, Brandon Vincent Dixon, Adrienne Warren, who Adrienne went on to do the Tina Turner musical, and Savion Glover. I saw this on Broadway, and Audra McDonald, and if you don't know Audra McDonald, you will. She has more Tony Awards than anyone. She has 6 Tony Awards, 3 for musicals, 3 for straight plays. So think of that. When I saw her do it, she was 6 months pregnant and she was tapping she was tapping her face off. I didn't know that. I knew she danced. I had no idea that she was a hoofer. 6 months pregnant and she is dancing her face off. Summer, no, it's not. That's Summer, the Donna Summer musical. Yes, there was a musical based on Donna Summer. It didn't last that long. Tina Turner musical was a huge hit in London. They came over here, and as I said, right as COVID, boom. And then Strange Loop, incredible off-Broadway musical by Michael R. Jackson, not Michael Jackson, but Michael R. Jackson, and about a out gay Black man, his life in theater. So new, so incredible. And hopefully after we get back on Broadway again, they'll bring back A Strange Loop. And then I say, what's next? So I think I did it. A couple minutes over, but we can turn on our mics and questions that you have about Black theater performance.
Yes, Scott. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I can't believe you actually were able to even put all of that together in like an hour. It's like, woo! What a beautiful experience, because I got to just sit here and be like, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. And then the plays that I've actually have been able to see, right? Then I'm like, oh, I saw that one. Oh yeah. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
So just imagine what we could explore within a course, and and gain, and all the knowledge of these plays and how they've influenced other works and everything. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
We have a couple minutes to open up for questions regarding Black theater. I would love for the audience or someone, if you want to unmic or raise your hand, however.
And it can also be things that I didn't talk about. If there's things about Black theater and I might know the answer, and if I don't, I'll just make it up.
Oh my goodness.
Or,
I would
or
love.
also, what are the things that popped for you? What are the things that were your ooh moments, or oh, that confused me, or oh, wow, I didn't know that. And no question is silly. I will just give silly answers.
Hi, I'm Yael. Thank you so much, Scott. I didn't know that the equity rules pay discrepancy. I didn't realize that as a Black actor, equity was underpaying and devaluing Black actors. So that was shocking for me to see that.
And guess what, Yael? Right now with We See White Theater, do you guys know that movement? That's what they're fighting for now. That Black actors still get, just like women in Hollywood, right? So until the Sony hack came out, that they realized that all these Black women like Jennifer Lawrence, who probably is a star, was getting put, and then you saw the Black women, Olivia, she won the Academy Award for The Help.
Spencer.
Octavia, yeah.
Octavia, because I conflate the two. Octavia, that Jessica Chastain said she would not do a movie with Octavia until she was paid as much as because Justine goes, I don't have no Oscar. Octavia does. So why am I getting more money than she is? So you have the discrepancy of Black and white still on Broadway, and then you still have the women, which are below that. So that's why they want to have their salaries published, because but it was so much less then. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could tell us how you feel about Porgy and Bess being at the Met. The last time I was there, it was at the Met. And who do you think Black theater is really for, if we're talking about a commercial experience? How do we serve Black theater, and which audience serves that purpose of actually having a show survive?
And Anne, I'm going to turn that. What is your response to that? And then I'll give you mine.
It's really, I feel like we have to pay attention to Black audiences, and we have to make theater accessible. The way ticket prices are now, $200 for middle orchestra, it's just not accessible. And so even though the stories are written by Black people, very few Black people actually get to see those shows. And I'm wondering if that, something like a Katori Hall's Hot Wing King, that was just up on Broadway, and then, because of the pandemic closed down, fully centered in the Black experience, and yet very few Black people got to see that show. And I don't know how many more would have had the show lasted. So I'm in a conundrum, and
No, you're right, Anne. And that's why forced bias about us. That is, first of all, so let's do the Met and then we'll go back. So it's not just, I don't think it's race, it's class. So the alt-right, the bougies are going to go and see it, right? Because they're going to have the money, but they're going to go and see everything. And it's even theater folks that would like to go to the Met, unless they're standing room only and that kind of stuff. So then it becomes more of a minstrel show, because you're showing Porgy and Bess that was written by white folks about Blacks who really are depicting their view of poor, just the dialogue, what they're sport and life. I mean, she's a prostitute, he's a cokehead, and oh, so I went and saw my Black theater. So this is what Black theater about. It's what I say with Tyler Perry. Yes, I'm fine if we all go and see in our community Tyler Perry, but if white folks are going and seeing him think, oh, that's what Black people are, then I have a problem. Yeah, so you have to think of the double consciousness that you're going into this with. So then we have to think, is Broadway the end all and be all for theater? Which I don't think it is. You don't have to be successful. And we want representation, but more people are going to see Black theater at, say in Chicago, at the Court Theater or at Congo Theater or blah, blah, or here in DC at African Continuum Theater Company or Black Rep or that. So if we're in the communities doing the theater for us, then we can have a more diverse theater. Most of these theater companies are going to, the Goodman, the Arena Stage, they're going to bring in their Black writers in residence. They're going to give them some money. They're going to do their one show. They're going to get the grants. They get the grants because now Daphne's on staff writing. So they'll give a little money to Daphne, but then they get millions of dollars because they got a Latinx writer.
Yeah.
And then same thing that they'll put Regina Hall in, not the Penumbra Theater, but the Guthrie. And then they make all the money off of her, where Penumbra Theater can't get those grants because they don't have, like Arena Stage, Guthrie, they have people that just write grants all day.
Yep.
So that's, you really hit a nerve, Anne, of if we think that this is the end all and be all, but we're not supporting, and hopefully with the We See You White Theater is, so if Broadway gets this much money from a diversity effort, then all these other theaters in New York who do Black theater and Latinx theater and Asian theater, they have to get a part of that profit. And I think that's what's more equitable. Okay, so Guthrie, you get this, but then the theaters of color in the area, they get the benefits from that. And I think that's the way, because a majority culture will not give minority rights. Yeah.
Scott, I just placed in the chat a list of Black theaters across the U.S. And then I'm placing in the chat the new grant, the Black Seed unveils, like the huge by the Mellon Foundation, that is supporting, I think 100 Black theaters across the United States. It's supporting in grants. But
Yep.
It's 2021, and this is the first time people thought about this. 2021, and it's like, yeah.
Well, the Ford Foundation with the Negro Ensemble Company, but this was back, in the 60s, and then they kind of ran their course, and yeah, so you have to keep on doing it. Good.
Diane, go for it.
Yes.
Yeah, on this subject, Scott, remember when you directed Crumbs, and I was out there and I saw it and I just fell in love with it. Crumbs from the Table of Joy. And here in Long Beach, when I directed it here, the tickets were $10. So it was for the community here in Long Beach. They sold out for 2 months, extended. And that show made more money for that theater than any other show the entire year.
Yeah.
Because the tickets were affordable.
Yeah.
And it served the community as well. But wow. Yeah.
And now, did they build on that with Lynn Nottage? Because that same thing happened to me at the Roundhouse Theater, or I did Raisin at Olney Theater, was a prominently white theater. It's the biggest ticket seller, And nope. 3 years later, then they do their other Black show. So it has to be in the community saying, hey, we're here. And it's like with films and everything else, it's, what is it that women can't sell films, and women, and then all of a sudden they have a Brides, well, that's a one-off, and then they have another one and another one. They got one failure, they won't let you do it again, but you need 10 successes to get you the next one. Yeah.
And COVID put a stop to some huge program that was happening in Broadway that Marcia and Chi-Chi were working on with Black Theater Night. So they were creating Black Theater Nights, and it started about 5 years ago, where you could have access to see a show, especially for Black audiences and Black creators and artists, at a massive discount price. And so
Yeah.
Black Theater Night was like amazing because you go to see a show and you see all your friends, and
Yes.
it's all the Black audience seeing a Broadway production. The actors have spoken about how incredible that was, and it was so successful that they created a Latinx theater night, and they also started creating the Signature Theater started creating an Asian theater night for the
Yeah.
shows that they were bringing in. So again, here you have Black artists being the trailblazers of
Yeah.
creating accessibility for some of these plays, and it literally, like, they were just about to announce the Asian theater night when COVID hit. And so here you
Yeah.
had, like, you're about to start these two incredible programs after you've had very successful Black theater nights on Broadway, and COVID hits and like shuts all of that down.
Well, and that was Jeremy O'Harris's Slave play.
Yep, he had
Remember?
his.
That was a Black theater night, and they go, Rihanna's texting during the show, that kind of stuff. And Dominique Morisseau in her program says, here's, dear white people, this is how we watch theater. We're gonna talk, we're gonna snap our gums, we're gonna shout back at the stage, and don't shush us. Don't snap your head back and say, I'm listening. We're different people. And so if you go and see a Dominique Morisseau play and they put that in the program, it's the price of admission. Because I don't know if I've been in that theater where with your friend, you go, no, she didn't. It's like a movie, go and see a Black movie with your Black friends. It's a completely different experience than going to a white theater seeing a Black film. It's not, don't go in that closet, they're gonna spoil it for you. So
it happened with Fella. I remember I was in Fella and they're telling you, get up and dance,
Yeah.
get up and dance. And you're getting up to dance, and then people are looking at you like you have 6 heads, and it's like they want us to get up and dance. Like, that's what they're asking us to do. This is part of the experience.
And that's why I don't know if you guys saw it out in Los Angeles. I'm not sure. I might play at the Tapers Fairview, Jackie Sibley's play, which talks about that. It's like, okay, this is how we're portrayed. Now we're gonna have all the white people looking at us. So do you guys know the play Fairview? Yeah, so look that one up. Daphne and Diane can make it available for you. It's just a real turn on what theater is and looking ourselves as people of color and how we're portrayed and what that gaze is. Yeah. Okay, because then we're gonna go on to the Young, Gifted, and Black in grad school. So I want to make sure we have time for that. But do we have any? Oh yes, Isabel.
Well, thank you for, curating that list of Black theater. Especially, I didn't really know a lot, especially like the early history. And now after you explaining briefly about each play, it makes me want to go read them. So thank you for giving that list. And I guess my question for you is, learning all these like different periods of Black theater, like which one was your most favorite to learn about? I mean, all of them are amazing and different and unique and multidimensional, but which one was your favorite to study?
Darn you. I'll tell you my favorite play. The Purple Flower.
The Purple Flower?
Yeah, because it's an abstract play and it comes out of nowhere. And when I teach it to my students, they just love it also. And then because I did a production of Day of Absence, and to watch at a PWI, because I teach at a PWI, predominantly white institute, to see all the Black actors in white face for a predominantly white audience, it's one of those experiences that you live for. Yeah. So those would be my two. So not a period, but 2 plays that I'd say.
Leon, you have a question, and then we'll move on to the second part. Yes, Leon.
I do. Scott, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. It's just been lovely. And I have a question. Would you please speak to Leroy Jones, The Toilet? It's a play that has, as a gay man, it is a play that has...
It's wrong.
Plagued my mind. I wanted to teach it, but I've been not able,
So why do you want to teach it?
I teach a class on AIDS literature for it's a first year seminar.
Yeah.
And so the content fits within it. And it's also such an interesting conversation about ritual and coming of age and gay bashing and all of that. It just really rings for me.
You know what I would teach it with? With The Slave.
Mm,
You know his play, The Slave?
yes.
That's because everyone knows Dutchman, but if you do Slave, because it's really, and when you teach Leroy Jones and Mary Baraka, Leroy Jones, you have to then center him in the time that he was his name. And if he was what he was, this is a huge, so we don't need to go into it. But basically, in the time period that he lived, that's why he changed his name, and then he went to Muhammad, and then he went back, and he was married to a white woman, and then he divorced, and then writes the most scathing play about, I'm going to kill you, white woman. So, and then he becomes a poet laureate, and so there's so much to teach with him. Yes, you could teach that play. And if I was going to do an AIDS play, I would do Cheryl West, Where It Hits Home.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really, I think it's so accessible, and yeah. I don't know if that helps with that question, but the toilet, you could do a whole seminar on that. And I think it's the same person that wrote that at that time.
I know it's actually been a play that has terrified me to teach.
Yeah. So then you got to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if you want to, I can send you some more information on him, because I kind of have a whole timeline.
I would love that. I would love to engage
that
a conversation about that play and about like his work. It has been such a poignant thing that I have just been terrified of teaching.
Yeah, but also in just realizing you're not the same person at 20 that you are at 50. And I don't want to be held for my beliefs and things that I said when I was 20. And I think a lot of people do that they, well, this is what he's, I go, no, that's who he was at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I will put the two of you in touch. I will write an email and get the two of you in touch so that you can share those resources.
Yeah.
So Scott, we'd love to hear your advice, especially about grad school, especially about being Black and going to grad school, being BIPOC, and going to grad school. Because a lot of our students we have in the space right now, we have grad students from our performance pedagogy MFA, and we have undergraduate students in the space right now that might be considering going into a career and pursuing higher education. So please
raise your hand if you're an undergraduate student. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Reactions.
Good. And then the other folks are grad students. Okay, good. So I think we had the majority of undergraduate students. So first of all, and I'm going to say, why grad school and when? Do not go right from undergrad into grad school. You need to find out what your gaps are. You got to know you've been in school your whole life already, plus 4 more years. So I didn't go to grad school till I was 30. I'd had a career for 15 years. So I had a career for already 10, 12 years. And Diane helped me through this. And then I was ready to do it and kind of done the things in both theater, TV, and film that I needed to do to be able to teach my students from an MFA point of view. And then I didn't start teaching until 15 years out of it. So I was old enough and young enough at the same time to teach with the maturity that I looked at with that, because we had a couple, I didn't need to go into those stories, but someone who was too close to your age, especially as a director, and trying to direct students when some of your older undergraduate students might be your age, it's a tough dynamic. And at least if you're older, you can bullshit them with the oldness, when you're younger. And it's tougher for women too. I mean, a lot of people do not take direction from a woman when she's younger and blah, all that kind of stuff. It's just, sexism, racism, blah, blah, blah. So know that. And then find out if you like the business. You have to go out and be in this business of theater before you know what you want to do in theater, especially in grad school. And then you have to find out the faculty. You don't go to the school because of the school, you go and graduate for the faculty. Who are these people that you want to study with? For me at Northwestern, it was performance studies, so I knew that. And then Frank Galati, who had just won the Tony Award for Grapes of Wrath. He had done Aida the musical, he had done Seussical the musical. I did Lost in the Stars with him. And in my cohort, it brought people like Mary Zimmerman. Mary Zimmerman was at the same time she did Metamorphosis, Arabian Nights, had her theater company that came out of Northwestern with a little kid named David Schwimmer, who, believe it or not, he's really a good stage actor. You just see him as Ross, but he's wonderful. He's about diversity. And Looking Glass Theater was started with Mary Zimmerman and Ross. And then think of theaters that are attached to a professional theater. So most of the places you want to, if you're an actor, you're going to want to get your equity card. And if it's attached to like San Diego, UC San Diego, the Old Globe, in Chicago, Northwestern is with Steppenwolf. So all the different theaters, Brown Theater is with Trinity Rep. So you're able to work with professionals as opposed to doing that. Then the other thing is where. So especially as a person of color, you want to stick to a big city that, like me, for my undergraduate, I'm out in the cornfields of Illinois. That was wrong choice, okay? But then I go to UCLA, and at least if there weren't as many people of color in the department, I'm in a very diverse community. So you're thinking of places like Atlanta, which is now like Black Hollywood too. And between the theater and Alliance and Kenny Leon, that you have so much there. Philadelphia, close to DC and New York. Atlanta, New York. I'd watch going to New York for grad school, just the amount of money that you have to spend just to live. It might be different now, but how expensive it is to live in New York while you're doing grad school. So think of those cities. And then the finances. You don't want to go in debt for grad school. They should pay you to go to grad school because you're going to be a TA, you're going to be working. And after Harvard years ago, realized that none of these kids could have a career in the arts because they couldn't pay off their Harvard grad school loans because they were taking $70,000 a year. So you come out with over $250,000 of debt. What kind of job in theater, unless you're making movies, are you going to be able to pay off that debt? So then all these theaters said that we can't be doing that. So then Brown now has complete free tuition, everything paid to go there. UC San Diego, UC Irvine, California Institute of the Arts, UCLA, those are all great places in California where you can have great education with grad school. Yale covers 70-90% of the cost. So if you get in, they're going to pay for the cost. And since you have Terrell Alvin McCraney there, I think you'd have a good time. Northwestern, it's up for grabs for their MFA acting program. All the rest of it is really good. They started an acting program 2 years ago. It's fully funded, and it's a 2-year MFA program. Kind of iffy about that. DePaul in Chicago, I put over Northwestern for their acting. And Juilliard, go for it, but so expensive. As long as you have millionaire parents, go to Juilliard. Then you can think of international also. RADA, Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, Lambda, going to school international, and Diane can tell you more about, it's much cheaper than going here in the States because it's subsidized. So even an international student, where if you're going to say the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, RSC, which is one of the top 5 theater schools in the world, which I didn't know until Alan Cumming came to do a masterclass for my students. And he went to the Royal Conservatoire, and I looked this, I go, oh my God. And I'm in Scotland visiting the school, state of the art, everything. And it next to free for if you're in the EU, but if you're an international student, it's maybe $20,000. So it's easier to pay out-of-state tuition internationally than it is in the United States. And also, all the programs in Europe, they're not 3-year programs. You can do a 1-year program. You can do a 2-year program. You can also want to figure out, what do you want to do it in? Do you want to, as Diane said, do you really need an MFA in acting? Maybe you do, but you might want to specialize in voice, getting a Linklater certificate, or movement with Alexander or Feldenkrais. So think of, if you like it, what is your specialty? Because when you're going for an academic job, you want something that sets you apart. And almost all schools are going to say an actor with a specialization in Black theater, Latinx theater, movement, voice. So make sure you're getting a specialization. And it's not until you're out for a couple of years you kind of realize, oh, or it might be, I have all the training, but I don't have any work in the classics. So I want to go to a school that really teaches classical acting. So know what those gaps are, or what's going to make you more saleable for when you are in the market. And then I sent Daphne also a link about how to get into your community and their website. So Black Theater Network, BTN, the National Black Theater Association. You should all start going to ATHA now when it's online or that, because American Theater Higher Education, you're going to start meeting your tribe and your people. And I think that's where Daphne and I met, was during ATHA with the Black Theater Association. Audra McDonald and Norm Lewis started Black Theater United Coalition, which was do the We See White Theater movement. And so you can watch that. Casting Association of America, they have these great free town halls through CSA. I sent a link for that too. And basically, with all these professionals, they're giving free advice from casting directors, how you make it in the business and what you have to do. And how come all these British actors are taking jobs away from Black actors? It's hard enough to work as a Black actor, but Daniel Kaluuya and Idris Elba and who's the other guy that comes over, and they take all the jobs away. So anywho, so those are ways that you can find more about your community. And that's the great thing about the internet right now. So who's going to grad school and what questions do you got?
Yes, let's open it up for questions as we're sort of coming to, a close.
And also from the grad students here, if you have advice for them, what you found in your years here at school.
That would be great too.
Hi, my name is Elise, and I went into college with the idea that I was most likely going to go into grad school and also study abroad. But sort of my question is, now that there's like COVID-19 and this pandemic, and a lot of my original plans have changed, I'm sort of wondering, if, not that it's going to be the same, because I don't think it's ever really going to be the same in the sense of being able to study abroad, or being able to if I do take the time now, when take the time before I decide to go to grad school, when would I basically go? But how do you feel the shift that's happened because of COVID and the pandemic will be on the future of schooling, both abroad as well as just grad school in general?
Yeah, so what I think, because I always tell my students, is to do a study abroad. And I did 2 study abroads into Australia. And I should mention National Institute of Dramatic Arts, NIDA, is one of the best theater schools in the world. That they have Boz Luhrmann, Toni Collette, who's that guy that does all the singing and dancing, and he's the biggest showman, and he's a wonderful actor, and he was Wolverine. Hugh Jackman. So they all studied in that horrible person, Mel Gibson, but he used to be a good person, I heard at one point. So all this, Nicole Kidman, they're all trained, and that's why they take the American jobs too. So to answer your question, I think basically what I would think is find, after you graduate, what year are you now, Elise?
I'm a sophomore.
Oh, sophomore. You'll be able to do it your senior year. You could do a study abroad. Next year might be iffy, but the year after that. And what you might do is find some summer certificate programs. So you could go to RADA, or you could go to Lambda, or you could go to RSC or NIDA and do a summer program and get a certificate, as opposed to just doing a study abroad where you're going, okay, what am I really getting out of this? Or after you graduate, then there's so many places that have our summer programs too. So you go with, in Ireland, the Diane, what's the Abbey? The Abbey has a summer theater program for students that have graduated from college. So that's what I would check into. Yeah, and use Diane's a great reference for study abroad everywhere. Okay, we got something in the chat here. What advice do you have for grad students choosing to get their degree in this pandemic with the fear that there will be a job market shift in this industry, those that want to go into teaching at the collegiate level? The great thing is right now, you're ahead of the curve. So Amber, I don't know if I see you here. No, I'm not sure if you're, okay. What year are you in your studies?
I'm a first year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's, are you getting a PhD?
No,
Or-
I'm in the MFA performance pedagogy here at LMU.
Yep. Okay. So I think, who knows how we're going to forecast this, but the more specialized, and it's all about networking. Both Diana and Daphne can do this. You get your butt out there, you get to every conference, you get in people's faces, you get them to know who you are, and that's how you get a job. Because right now, say that if you interviewed at University of Maryland, I'm going to know you. So already that's a callback, where if I haven't met anyone else, but you're at conferences and you see people, and that's how everything goes. It's like every business in the world. Who do you know? I mean, you got to have the stuff to back it up, but it goes to those people that are going, you get there, you see them everywhere. Harvey Young, who was another, just an amazing Black scholar who started at Northwestern, I think after I left, and I met him at conferences. So we started teaching about the same time. And all of a sudden we're writing for each other, and he's offering, and they had asked me to come in to be the director of their new MFA in acting program because of Harvey. And then all of a sudden Harvey is he's the dean at Boston University School of Fine Arts. And so I'm writing for him, and you go, it's just because we were doing conferences, and every time you're thinking of someone, I'll say, oh, Harvey, do you know someone? And especially in Black theater, Latinx theater, that everybody knows everybody. So someone's going to call someone to say, oh, would you, right now at Duke, they were looking for a new hire. So Esther Kim Lee, who used to be my colleague, calls me and say, hey, Scott, I was able to recommend 3 people. Those 3 people all got interviews, as opposed to there might be 20 other people who even better, shinier, but they don't know those people. So it's about start doing the networking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Any other questions? We have an expert in the room, y'all. Take that advantage. Ask him anything you
No
like.
question too small. Yes, Kelly.
This is going back to the last topic, but with all of the resources that you provided us with, if Black theater is something completely new to you and you see all these resources, what's a good way to approach that? If you have do you just go through the timeline, or you're like, these are the pieces that you should look at first?
Yeah, and that's why I just did that abbreviated of all the ones. And that's why you can get, I think, almost all those plays, I kept them to Black theater volumes 1 and 2, which have in the library, or that kind of stuff. Oh, and now you can also do drama online through Alexander Street Press. Diana and Daphne, you guys know that web source? Yeah, so Alexander Street Press, Black drama online, and all these plays are free online. And if you can't find that, either Diane or Daphne can email me, because that's the best source now, that all these plays are online because they want to make them. So you're able to just go through those. And a lot of them are 1-acts or shorter plays. And then it's almost like Googling down a rabbit hole. Then you go, oh, I really like Alice Childress. I know Raisin, but let me read these other plays. So it's very easy to start that. And then Daphne, on your LMU website, about contemporary Black playwrights, that might be an interest too. And the New York Times, there's a great 10 Black playwrights you should know. and they Jeremy O'Harris and Danielle Love and all the newer folks that you guys should know too. But you're going to get all that. So that's why I said go to some of the earlier ones.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Because also, Kelly, until I went to graduate school, I had never read a Black play in my life. I was at Eastern Illinois. I never did a Black play on stage. At UCLA, I never did a Black play. I don't even know if they knew that there were Black plays out there. And you talk about Asian plays or Latinx plays, that was even worse. You're in Los Angeles and there's no Asian plays in Los Angeles. So I'm sitting there going, so I had to learn this all in grad school. And I felt like the dumbest Black person in the world. I'm in Sandra Richards' class and I haven't read all these plays. And my white colleagues knew more about Black theater than I did as a Black person. And that sometimes happens in my history class, that white students that went to good high schools had more information on Black culture than Black students that went to a high school that didn't have any Black theater training. And so my Black students said, I'm really angry. The white kids in the class know more about my culture than I do. Yeah.
And I can only imagine Sandra, knowing her. She must have been like, you better know all these plays.
Well, I'm short, I'm working on 2 Trains Running with August Wilson at the Goodman Theater, that after every rehearsal, beers and that were 5 cents. So all you had to do is, give them a nickel and you get, so I'm, sitting there drinking with August Wilson. I had no idea who he was. I go, why is this damn play so long? Because I was not in theater, and it was early in his career too, because this is like 1991, so he only had like 2 plays in the cycle so far, Fences and Seven Tars. So for me it was like going, this is who is this August Wilson guy? And then looking back, you go, he was new to it also, because his plays were only done at regional theaters, at Penumbra and that kind of stuff. So, but that's why you can start from scratch. And then thank God for Lloyd Richards, he became my theater dad and just said, he made me work on, I had to be the play reader for him the next season at the O'Neill Center. So he's trying to direct a play and I'm reading all of these scripts, and I realized, oh, he was so smart. He's helping me to be a dramaturg and helping me to be an artistic director. What are these plays that could go into a season? And those are some of the best teachers. He didn't tell me why. He said, and then the same thing, he was casting his next play at Denver Center Rep. And he made me go through all the headshots and resumes. He goes, okay, give me your casting ideas for this. He didn't tell me why. And I'm not sure if he did it, but these are the ones that I chose. So look for those mentors in your life always. Because my whole career is through the back door. I never got a job through the front door. It was always through the back door.
Scott.
Or through the window.
Scott, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think that that's a great way to also sort of like wrap up and conclude, especially because it's so inspirational to think of, like, maybe someone in this space right now, and Elise hasn't shared this with you, but Elise is also a playwright. Not only is Elise, I see you, Elise, I'm gonna call you out. She's not only an actor, but also a playwright, right? So we never know who's in our spaces, and we never know who's gonna be the next, or who's gonna do that, the next, right? And so to always, always cherish each other, support each other, uplift each other, and work with one another, because you might be right here, right now, listening to this lecture, but 10 years from now, y'all might be getting,
I'll be asking you for a job in 10 years.
Right?
Exactly.
Scott, thank you again so much for being in the space. I know it's super late for you to come here and share all this knowledge. Thank you so much. It means the world to us. And, I'm just going to open up the gallery so we can see everyone at the final shot. And
yes.
Thank you.
Oh, we should do a screenshot also. Did you do a screenshot?
I'll do a screenshot real quickly. Yes. All right, y'all. If you have your cameras on, if you want to turn
Everybody
your cameras on, turn your cameras on if you can. We'll do a little screenshot, fix your hair, looking over.
There we go.
They're gonna, give me 1 second. I'm going to move some things, and let's see if I can do this. Okay, ready? 1, and I'll take 2 because we have 2 pages. Good. 1, 2, 3. Screenshot number 1. Oh, look at all these beautiful people. And I'm going to do 1 more screenshot so we get everyone from the second page as well. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Scott. Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Have a good night. If
Thank
have
you,
more
everyone.
class,
It's been an
I'll see
honor
you
to be
all.
with you. And thank you, Daphne.
Yes.
Thank you for Diane
Thank you,
for bringing me.
Scott.
I love you, darling.
I love you too. And you got my email, so if people have questions, they can email me.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Ciao, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Do we stay or do we go to the class Zoom?
We're gonna go to our link because I have to send this off to people. So I think, oh, I'm still recording. All right, let me stop. Bye, everyone.